Love does not always announce itself. Sometimes it enters quietly, without excitement, without urgency, without promises that sound impressive. And this story begins with that kind of love. They did not fall in love quickly. There was no moment that demanded attention, no turning point people talk about later, just time. Time spent in ordinary ways, sitting together after long days, sharing meals without ceremony, listening more than speaking. He had lived long enough to stop believing in loud affection. Life had taught him that noise fades quickly. What remains is presence. She understood that instinctively, not because she had studied love, but because she had lived through disappointment before. She no longer trusted intensity, she trusted consistency. Their connection formed slowly, not through declarations, but through reliability. He noticed how she stayed when days were dull, how she didn't search for excitement elsewhere, how she found comfort in routine. Routine is often misunderstood. People mistake it for boredom. But routine, when shared, becomes stability. Stability was something they both valued more than passion. Passion burns brightly. Stability keeps the light on. They met during a phase when life had already shaped them. Dreams had been adjusted. Expectations had softened. Neither of them was trying to impress. That honesty mattered. There was no performance, only presence. He did not chase her attention. She did not demand reassurance. They allowed space. Space is a rare form of respect. Their love did not rush toward labels. It did not ask for guarantees. It stayed where it was and grew naturally. People around them sometimes misunderstood. They expected excitement. They expected visible proof. They saw none. What they did not see was everything. They did not see the quiet understanding, the way silence felt comfortable, not awkward, the way decisions were made calmly, not emotionally. Love did not interrupt their lives, it integrated into them. He appreciated how she never tried to change him, not his habits, not his pace, not his past. Acceptance is a powerful form of love. It does not seek improvement, it allows growth. She appreciated how he listened without preparing responses, how he stayed present without fixing everything. Fixing is often mistaken for care. But care sometimes means staying still. They learned this together, not through lessons, but through living. Their days were not dramatic, they were consistent. Consistency revealed character. He noticed how she handled difficulty, not with complaints. With calm adjustments, she noticed how he handled responsibility, not with avoidance, with quiet effort. Effort does not need applause, it needs acknowledgement. They acknowledged each other silently, through small gestures, through presence. Love did not demand attention, it demanded participation. They participated fully, even when life felt heavy, even when progress was slow. Slow progress does not weaken love, impatience does. They were not impatient, they trusted time. Trusting time requires confidence. Confidence grows from self-respect. Both had learned that earlier in life, from mistakes, from endings, from choosing wrong things too loudly. Now they chose quietly. Their love was not built to be noticed. It was built to last. There were moments when others questioned it. They asked if something was missing. Nothing was missing. Nothing needed to be added. Love does not always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels safe. Safety allows rest. Rest allows clarity. Clarity strengthened their bond. They understood something many people learned too late. Love does not have to prove itself every day. It only has to show up. Showing up consistently creates trust. Trust deepens connection. Connection does not require noise. Their relationship did not revolve around moments. It revolved around days. Ordinary days. Ordinary days reveal extraordinary commitment. As time passed, their love did not grow louder. It grew deeper. Depth does not attract attention. It attracts longevity. They were building something that did not need explanation, something that felt right without justification. This kind of love does not rush forward. It walks beside you. And walking together quietly often matters more than arriving quickly. But even the quietest love is tested, not by conflict, but by change, and change was coming, not dramatically, gradually. Love that doesn't make noise, it stays. Life rarely tests relationships with noise. More often, it places them quietly inside responsibility. The days began to change. Work demanded more time. Evenings arrived heavier than before. Not louder, just heavier. He came home later now. Words were fewer. Energy was limited, but distance had not entered the room. Only exhaustion had. She noticed it immediately, not with suspicion, not with questions, with awareness. In many relationships, this is where voices rise. This is where complaints appear. She chose something else. She chose space. She understood that silence does not always mean withdrawal. Sometimes it simply means fatigue. She sat near him. Not always speaking, sometimes placing a cup of tea nearby, sometimes just staying. That presence became support, not announced, felt. He began to understand something new. Love does not always ask questions. Sometimes it simply stays close enough to be felt. The pressure he carried slowly surfaced. Work uncertainty, future responsibility, the quiet fear of falling behind. He did not explain everything, but he sensed that she understood. Being understood without explanation is one of the rarest comforts. There were moments when he wondered if he was holding her back, her time, her pace, her possibilities. One evening, he spoke that fear aloud. Carefully, she listened. Then calmly, she said something simple. She was not in a hurry. There was no sacrifice in her voice, only truth. For the first time in a long while, he felt the weight ease. Love did not ask him to move faster. It allowed him to remain steady. The days continued, work, fatigue, responsibilities, but something had shifted. He no longer felt the need to prove progress daily. He simply worked. She continued managing her own life, her routines, her identity. She never reduced herself to someone waiting. That balance made the relationship stronger. Two people walking together without merging into one another. During difficult days, they did not hold each other tightly. They walked side by side. Walking together requires more trust than holding on. Some nights were quiet, not empty, quiet. On those nights, love was not expressed in words, it existed in presence. Sometimes he slept early, she stayed nearby. He knew that if he woke, she would be there. That certainty created rest. From the outside, nothing looked remarkable, but inside, something resilient was forming. This relationship did not push him forward, it prevented him from falling apart. Sometimes that is the greatest form of strength. They did not know what the future held, but they knew this much: they were staying, quietly. And when love stays this way, it does not interrupt life, it becomes part of it. Change did not arrive as a crisis, it arrived as accumulation. Small shifts that added weight before anyone noticed they were carrying it. The pace of life kept moving forward. Expectations increased, responsibilities layered. Neither of them complained, they adjusted. Adjustment is quiet work, it does not draw attention, but it reshapes relationships. They began spending less time talking about their days and more time simply recovering from them. Recovery became necessary, not dramatic, necessary. He noticed how evenings felt different now, not colder, more deliberate. They no longer filled silence automatically, they respected it. Respecting silence is a sign of emotional maturity. She noticed changes in him too, not failures, limitations. He moved more cautiously, rested more intentionally. She did not interpret this as weakness, she recognized it as awareness. Awareness changes how love is expressed. They stopped planning far ahead, not because of fear, because presence felt more important than projection. They learned to focus on what was in front of them, today's responsibilities, today's energy. This approach simplified things, it removed pressure. Pressure often turns love into performance. They avoided that. Some relationships demand constant reassurance. Theirs did not. Trust had been built quietly, layer by layer. That trust was tested when life presented uncertainty. Not dramatic uncertainty, practical uncertainty, decisions about time, about finances, about priorities. They approached these decisions without urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. They discussed carefully, not to win, to understand. Understanding does not rush. She brought perspective. He brought stability. Neither tried to dominate the conversation. They listened. Listening slowed everything down. He realized something during those conversations. This love did not push him toward outcomes. It anchored him during uncertainty. Anchors do not move you forward, they keep you steady. Steadiness became essential. They began redefining what progress meant, not advancement, sustainability. Could they maintain peace while life demanded more? That question mattered more than achievement. They protected their routines, simple routines, meals together. Evening walks, these routines were not habits, they were agreements, agreements to remain connected without explanation. She noticed how easily external noise could have disrupted this balance. Advice from others, comparisons. They chose not to absorb it. Comparison distorts reality, especially in relationships. They did not measure their love against anyone else's. They measured it against their well-being. Well-being became the standard. On days when energy was low, they reduced expectations, not affection. Affection does not require effort. It requires attention. Attention remained intact. They allowed each other to change without fear. Change is inevitable. Resistance is optional. He changed in pace. She changed in priorities. They adjusted without panic. Panic turns change into threat. They treated it as transition. Transitions require patience. There were moments when doubts surfaced. Quiet doubt: was this enough? They never asked the question aloud. They answered it through action. They stayed. Staying is not passive. It is an active choice. Choosing to stay when nothing is exciting requires conviction. Conviction had replaced passion. Passion fades, conviction remains. They found comfort in predictability, not stagnation. Predictability. Predictability reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety allows intimacy to deepen. Intimacy no longer needed words. It existed in understanding. He trusted her presence. She trusted his consistency. Consistency became their language. They were no longer proving love. They were practicing it. Practice builds mastery. Mastery in love looks quiet. They learned that love does not have to be impressive to be enduring. Endurance mattered now. As time passed, their bond felt less like emotion and more like structure. Structure supports, emotion reacts, support outlasts reaction. They became aware that the world often celebrates beginnings, not continuations. They did not need celebration. They needed continuity. Continuity requires effort, quiet effort. They were willing. They had not avoided difficulty. They had adapted to it. Adaptation is love in motion. They understood something deeply now. Love does not always feel warm. Sometimes it feels reliable. Reliability does not excite, it sustains. They sustained each other without announcement. But life does not stop offering challenges. The next one would be more personal. It would test not just their patience, but their sense of independence, and it would ask an important question. Can love remain quiet when roles begin to change? Change eventually reaches every relationship, not as a sudden event, but as a shift in roles. And when roles change, love is tested quietly. They did not notice it at first. The shift was subtle: who remembered appointments, who carried more responsibility, who adjusted first. Independence had always mattered to both of them. They valued it deeply. Love had never meant losing oneself. But life has a way of renegotiating independence without asking permission. He began needing more time, not because he was incapable, because energy had changed. She noticed. She did not react immediately. Awareness came before action. In many relationships, this is where imbalance creates tension. She resisted the instinct to take over completely. Helping too much can quietly turn into control. She chose support instead, support that waited. She asked before stepping in, she listened before deciding. This mattered more than she realized. He felt the difference. He felt included, not managed. Being included preserves dignity. He began trusting her more deeply. Not because she solved everything, because she respected his agency. Agency does not disappear with need. It adapts. They talked more deliberately now, not often, but intentionally. They discussed boundaries. What help felt supportive. What help felt intrusive. These conversations were not easy. They required honesty. Honesty at this stage is an act of courage. She admitted her fear of overstepping. He admitted his fear of becoming a burden. Naming fears reduced their power. Love did not rush to reassure. It listened. Listening created space for new agreements. They redefined partnership, not as equality of effort, but as equality of respect. Respect does not require symmetry, it requires intention. Some days she carried more, other days he insisted on carrying his share. She let him. Letting someone try is a form of trust. Trust maintained balance when strength fluctuated. They adjusted routines gently, not to protect weakness, but to protect connection. Connection mattered more than efficiency. Outside voices sometimes interfered. Advice came easily. You should handle everything now. He shouldn't have to worry anymore. They listened politely, then decided privately. Their relationship did not belong to public opinion. They understood something crucial. Love does not need witnesses to be valid. As roles shifted, so did their understanding of contribution. Contribution was no longer measured by output. It was measured by presence. He offered perspective. She offered steadiness. Both mattered. She noticed how this phase required more patience than passion. Patience does not feel romantic, but it is enduring. They slowed down further, not out of resignation, out of care. Care adjusted pace. He learned to accept help without shame. Shame isolates, acceptance connects. She learned to step back without guilt. Guilt creates resentment. Trust creates peace. Peace became their shared goal. They did not seek excitement. They sought harmony. Harmony is quiet. There were moments of frustration. They did not deny them, but frustration was not allowed to define the relationship. They addressed it calmly, not immediately, but honestly. Honesty replaced assumption. Assumption creates distance. They became more intentional about time together. Not more time, better time. Quality replaced quantity. They noticed how love at this stage required fewer words. Understanding had taken their place. He no longer worried about proving value. She no longer worried about carrying too much. Balance was no longer fixed. It was responsive. Responsiveness kept resentment away. They accepted that independence would look different now. Not lesser, different. Difference does not diminish love, it deepens it. They realized something quietly profound. Love that stays is not threatened by change, it adapts to it. Adaptation became their strength. They were not holding on to who they used to be. They were honoring who they were becoming. That acceptance brought calm. Calm allowed trust to grow further. They felt grounded now, not because life was predictable, but because their connection was. They sensed another transition ahead, one they could not plan for. Time itself would soon become more visible. Aging would introduce questions they had not yet faced, questions about longevity, about legacy, about what remains when time moves forward relentlessly. Answering those questions together would be their final test, and it would reveal whether love that does not make noise can also remain gentle in the face of time. Time does not announce itself loudly. It moves forward quietly, leaving small marks along the way. and one day those marks become visible. They became aware of time not through birthdays, but through pauses, pauses between movements, pauses between decisions. Life had slowed, not stopped, slowed. They did not resist it. Resistance creates exhaustion. Acceptance creates balance. Their days were simpler now, less crowded, less urgent. Simplicity revealed what mattered most. They spent mornings together without rushing. Evenings were softer. Conversation was no longer constant, but connection remained steady. They understood something deeply now. Love does not need constant attention, it needs alignment. Alignment between pace and patience, between care and respect. They talked more about memories, not with regret, with gratitude. Gratitude softened everything. They did not mourn what had passed, they acknowledged it. Acknowledgement honors experience without clinging to it. He moved slower now. She adjusted naturally, not dramatically. Naturally, she did not rush him. He did not apologize for the pace. No explanations were required. Understanding had replaced them. They learned to rest together, not just physically, emotionally. Resting together is one of the quietest forms of intimacy. There were moments of vulnerability, not fear-driven, honest. He wondered aloud what would remain if one of them were gone. She did not interrupt the thought. She sat with it. Sitting with difficult questions is another form of love. They spoke about practical things, not with heaviness, with clarity. Clarity reduced fear. Fear thrives in avoidance. They prepared gently, not because they expected an end, but because preparation is an act of care. Care extends beyond the present moment. They did not romanticize permanence. They valued presence. Presence was what they had always practiced. He realized something one evening. This love had never demanded attention, yet it had shaped his life completely. She realized something too. This love had never limited her. It had allowed her to remain herself. That realization brought peace. They no longer measured their relationship by intensity. They measured it by safety. Safety to be honest, safety to be tired, safety to change. Change continued, quietly. Some days were harder than others. They did not pretend otherwise. On difficult days, love did not motivate, it steadied. Steadiness is underrated. They noticed how the world around them celebrated beginnings and endings, rarely the middle. They lived in the middle. The middle is where life happens. They did not seek grand conclusions. They accepted continuity. Continuity became their achievement. As years passed, their love did not become fragile. It became gentle. Gentleness is strength without force. They held hands less tightly now, not because of distance, because trust no longer required grip. Trust had settled in. They spent time in shared silence, silence filled with understanding. Understanding does not need reinforcement. One evening, as daylight faded slowly, they sat together without speaking. Nothing needed to be said. That moment captured everything their love had become. No noise, no display, just presence. They had built a relationship that did not depend on excitement. It depended on choice. They had chosen each other again and again without announcement. Choosing quietly is harder than choosing loudly. It requires commitment without validation. They never needed applause, they needed honesty. Honesty had guided them well. As time continued forward, they felt prepared, not for endings, for whatever came next. Preparedness did not come from control, it came from trust, trust in each other, trust in the life they had built. Their love did not promise forever, it practiced presence. Presence was enough. This was the kind of love that does not make noise. It does not demand attention, it stays.